I'm going to be recording some videos to share with my team so they have awareness of the tools that I use, and hopefully, this is going to add some value. So, getting started, I'm going to open up the terminal app. So, I do not use the default terminal app that comes with the Mac OS. I generally would install item 2. So, how this can be done is you can simply um, install Brew first. Simply Google for Brew, install Brew on your MacBook. After that, simply do a Brew install item 2, and voila, that would give you a new terminal. And I'm going to be using shortcut all over the show. So I've got, as you can see, I'm pressing right now Command and Spacebar to open up Spotlight Search. There are better alternatives for this, like Alfred 4, but maybe something for a later topic. So right now, as you saw, I pressed Command and Space Bar, and then typed in item, and then press Enter, and this opened it up. It brought up the item application. From there, I wanted to quickly go through Tmux that I use quite a bit. So Tmux is similar to Screen. It allows you to divide your terminal screen into multiple sections. So I'm just going to fire Tmux. I have, oops, my bad. So Tmux from here, nothing fancy. It's still taking time to get into the session, and that's because I've got a whole bunch of customized configuration for Tmux, which, as you can see, I have got. It's coming from this path: users, user data, repositories, Tmux config Tmux. This is not going to be relevant to you. This just shows you how much I have been using Tmux, and probably for a long time. So from here, I am also using ZSH. So I'm not using Bash 4 in my configuration. I think that became the default, unless people have simply upgraded their operating systems while not really changing their shell. Um, if that doesn't make any sense, please just ignore it. Moving on from here, so Tmux is another one. So I'll quickly try to go through the how I use some of the features. So one of the feature is actually let's go through the use case. So use case in my that I think is generally beneficial when you are pairing with someone and the person on the other end or you yourself do not have too many screens handy. So what you can do is you can essentially do some troubleshooting on one side, like I can just do Docker images on one side or run a very other lengthy command. And at the same time, I'm going to now split my terminal screen. So I will do a Control A and then, yeah, double quotes. So Control A, and then as soon as I leave those two keys, I just press Shift and double quotes, and that splits the screen. So here I can basically do some of the command. I can run top, which will display a whole bunch of processes in real time, and other aspects of those processes, like how much memory they are taking, how much CPU time they are taking, all of those aspects. You can also, there's actually no, I don't think there is a limit to how many slices or how many portions you can divide the screen into. So another thing I'll quickly show you now is, so I'll press Control A and then I'll press ampersand, sorry, percentage or 5 number. So as you can see, it creates a vertical split. So I can do a tail of a log file here, and I can do like a whole bunch of other commands like simultaneously. So I could be running a command on one side, and I could be tailing a log file at the same token. Moving on from here, how do I switch between these different panes that I'm creating? So again, I'm gonna quickly show you that. So that's another thing I've just done is I have pressed Control I and then spacebar, which simply changes the orientation of these panes. I would sometimes play around with that. I think I need to reset the size of my font, and I hope it's still visible. That's because Tmux seems to be not playing very nicely with the increased font size that I had before. I'm just going to try it one more time. Okay, so again, okay, well, it seems to be working better now. Cool. So from here, in order to cycle through these subsections, for the lack of a better word, although I would urge you to go through the manual of Tmux or simply Google for Tmux to understand what the correct terminology for this is, if these are called panes or if these are called something else. So the way I can cycle between these workspaces or panes or is through, I would again use the control keys, which in my case is mapped to control A. And then I will simply use the arrow or directional keys, the ones that we would generally use for gaming and all. So control A, if I press left, it will go to left. If I press right, it will come to right. If I press down, it will come to the one at the bottom. Um, if I have to get out of any of this, I can simply do an exit through using the keyword, or I can press Control D, and that will exit that given space or pane. The other thing I'll quickly talk about is so I don't only just use like one workspace. I really need to brush up on my terminology for the official terminology of Tmux, of Tmux features. But I'll just carry on. So from here, if you look at the bottom of my screen, you will see on the left-hand corner that there is this 0 and then ZSH. ZSH is the shell that I'm using, and 0 is the numerical representation of the this whole pane that I have got under Tmux. So from here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just press Control A and I press C, and that creates a brand new one. So if I want, I can actually be focusing on one thing at a time. So I don't have to be in a position where on one side I've got plethora of stuff open and I don't have enough space. So I can just keep on creating. I can again press Control A and C. Now, in order to cycle between these, you have to do Control A N or Control A P. So N is for next and P is for previous. So you can just use either of them. But if you have too many, you're better off than making choice. If you are more towards the, uh, depending on like where you exactly are, like using next or previous, either of them is going to be much easier. What else should I quickly touch on here? Because I really want to keep this video short. Okay, so my work environment, everything that I install, I would install using Brew. And I do not install that using by typing that through. I would generally use a brew file. So I maintain all of my brew file. I will take you to that directory. So I'm going to fire a command called J and my, because I kind of remember my directory, but not exactly. And I'll explain what this does. So jmy, it actually takes me, so first time it took me to oh my ZSH, which is a topic for another time. Just Google for it. So second time when I fired it, it took me to my Mac setup, which is the directory that I kind of was looking for, but I don't remember the names of exact directories. Just easy to use auto jump. So J is actually, J comes from a binary called auto jump. Let me see if I can actually display help. Oh, sweet. Okay. So as you can see, like once it's been set up, let's see, man page for J, no man page for J. Okay. So all this is doing is it's keeping, every time I'm browsing different directories, it's keeping a historical record of what directory names, and somehow it's automatically mapping those whenever I want to jump to a particular directory. It uses some kind of search mechanism, and I should know that whether it's what kind of algorithm it uses, but I do not. So all I gotta do is I gotta remember a few characters of that directory, and that is enough for it to go through the list and be like, is it this directory or is it this directory? So it will keep on showing you different options. Cool. So we are in this directory. I'm just going to quickly open up my brew file. I'll show you my ugly directory structure here. I don't think I have made it publicly accessible because I've been playing around with this for years, but I haven't really cleaned it up. But I believe my brew file is probably going to be much more cleaner. So again, I've got two different brew files, and that's can't remember the reason. I actually no, I do. I've got one work kind of machine, and I've got one personal machine. So personal machine, I tend to have way more applications installed on that because yeah, you just use stuff. And as you can see, I use Vim a lot. I think I know Vim enough. Probably a topic for a different day. So in this case, my personal machine is Intel based. So I'm just going to open up this personal machine. I'll touch on a few things here. Like it's a pretty simple file. Like all it's basically doing is it's got a list of all the tabs. Tabs, I am probably going to use the wrong analogy, but tabs are essentially what we think of as repositories when we think of other package management tools such as Yum, apt. So all of that. And so here I've got a bunch of tabs configured so that I can actually use the general tabs which are provided by Homebrew, and then some additional tabs that I tend to use. And it also has got tabs that I've configured because I tend to play around with stuff. Then items which are starting with blue as a prefix, those items are brew packages. And so simply like anything that you can install by typing in brew install blah, that is configured here. And there is a command which spits out this entire file. So if you have got a machine on which you have installed a lot of things using brew, I will eventually share like how you can simply just spit that out. Now, moving on from Brew, I've got like Cask installed. Now, Cask comes into play where some utilities are not directly, you cannot install them directly through Brew. I do not remember the distinction. I would not be able to explain that properly. However, some packages are simply accessible from casks. And I try to remember if I had to do anything special to install to enable cask in some way. No, I'm probably confusing that with Mass, which is another tool which uses your App Store but installs all the applications using your CLI. So you never have to go to the App Store and click and install things. So as you can see, I've got like a whole bunch of packages which I'm installing using Brew. You will see some not safe for work names, but I promise you these are good utilities. Like I use this utility as an example. Um, and some names, you can always ask me what particular name stands for. Moving on, again, whole range of casks, and I'll take you to another, so mass entries. So mass, let's just quickly see if mass has got a man page. No man page. That's okay. Give me some kind of information mass. I think of this as or I know this as a tool which can be used to install everything, or in my case, everything that I need by that comes from App Store without having to go to App Store. So as you can see, I've basically got some entries here where I'm installing this app called Amphetamine. So my screen is not turned off, especially if I'm doing things which require running longer. Like on my personal systems, I especially keep this enabled so that my backups, if they are configured, or if I'm transferring anything on my local network, then my system just doesn't shut off because it's not connected to it's not connected to power. Simple Mind, it's a mind mapping application that I use quite heavily. Xcode, every time you do installation, every time you do an upgrade of your operating system, you have to ensure that you upgrade your Xcode. So just kind of enabling, just doing this, I think, does the trick for me, unless I do Xcode CLI install from shell. I'm just gonna hit pause here because 15 minutes is a long enough time. And I think I will record whatever else is on my mind in another video. Thank you.